now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It's another beautiful Monday morning here in the Cayman Islands, February the 22nd. Can you believe that, excuse me, this month is almost gone? Somehow I've managed to catch a cold. One of the great things about COVID life is I can tell you that nobody was catching colds because number one, we were all inside. And number two, we were all wearing a mask when we did go outside. So I think everyone was relatively safe, not just from the coronavirus, but indeed just from regular viruses, because we were on hyper alert. Everybody was washing their hands. Everybody was wearing a mask. And I was reminded over the weekend how incredibly fortunate we are that we no longer have to walk around wearing a mask, although if you're in a high priority category, it's probably still good advice, because as you saw over the last couple of days, we got some information about some more quarantine breaches. And boy, I tell you what, it's shocking the people that will breach quarantine regulations. You never think that it's the ones that actually end up doing it, although some of them are a little bit logical, but still, when it's a young kid, you think, right, maybe they just don't understand the implications of what it is that they're doing. But when you have someone like this individual who is a nurse, and her husband is a service manager or something there by Rubus and Cayman Brac. These Cayman Brac residents, I should just say, not Cayman Brackers. Let me not insult Cayman Brackers this morning. But these Cayman Brac residents are both now in quarantine themselves because they went and visited friends who had come back and who were in quarantine. Now, if you've been paying attention to the news, the most shocking part of this is that she's a nurse. Wow. I mean, are you kidding me? Good morning to Karen. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Tony. Tony is locked in from Canada. Wow, Tony, what is the weather like? We're going to talk about some weather alerts here in the minute. We do have some special guests that are joining us in the studio as well around the 8 o'clock hour to talk about bullying here in the Cayman Islands. And this is a very, very serious topic. And I think it's far worse than a lot of you recognize in terms of what is happening to your children. And this is a wake-up call, folks. We need to understand fully what is happening and, more importantly, how we can address it. So we do have a number of guests who will be joining us. 3 persons are scheduled to join us around 8 o'clock. So let me just see who else is here with us. So yeah, this nurse, her name is, hold on one second. Let me just get the name. So good morning to Marshall joining us from North Carolina. Good morning to the beautiful Bonnie from East End. Hope that you're doing well. I've got you on my list to see you at some point this week. Let me just see what's going on here. Yeah, so thank you all so much for, of course, logging on bright and early. Miss Beulah is here. Good morning to the lovely Miss Beulah. Hello, Olivia. Tony says, good morning, Sandy. Please tell the keyboard player to look me up on Facebook. The keyboard player in that video is, oh gosh, let me try to remember his name now. He is so incredibly talented. His name will come to me in a second. He's a Miller, actually. So his name will come to me in a second. And when it does, I'll let you know. Okay. Neil Miller. There you go. It just came to me. All right. All right, my apologies. All right, good folks. So let me just see. I noticed this morning, and I don't know if anybody else had a power outage. Good morning, Louisa. There was a slight power outage this morning in the Lower Valley area. It was just like a blip. Like it actually didn't last very long at all. But I noticed that when that happened, I had to restart my PC and everything. So messages that I sent from the computer did not go through this morning. So yes. So a lot of you are messaging me about a number of different things. We will see what happens in this particular case with this quarantine breach. A lot of persons are saying that, listen, she should actually be terminated. I don't know if that will happen, but I think she should be prosecuted just like everyone else. And if prosecution means jail time, then so be it. I have no sympathy for her. She's a nurse. She is a nurse. She should have known better. So I might have to pull one guest in here. I'm just double checking the time. Good morning to Miss Morner. Hi, Louie. Thank you so much for logging in. We've got Anna here, Catherine. Yes, Benil Miller. Thank you so much, Hilton. Very, very talented musician, by the way. Marshall says she's a nurse. Shouldn't she know better? She needs to be locked up. Well, she's definitely a nurse, a registered nurse of, 15 plus years, because she was a nurse at one facility in the US for 15 years. And she's been in Cayman Brac, I believe, since 2008. Now, everyone says, oh my gosh, she's such a nice person. And I'm sure she is a really nice person. I am sure of that. But this has absolutely nothing to do with being a nice person. This is about you respecting the laws of the country. And nice people sometimes do not respect the laws. Shocking, but true. So I guess her and her husband, who are super nice, friendly people, don't respect the laws. And my gosh, if a nurse doesn't respect the COVID laws and regulations, why would we expect anybody else to do so? Like, it's a really, real serious indictment in her. It makes her look bad. It makes the HSA look bad. And listen, the HSA, I guess they do their best, but sometimes their employees make them really, really look bad. Like this whole fiasco with visitors coming to the Cayman Islands and being able to get a vaccine. Let's be frank here, folks. This should have never, ever, ever been the case. The HSA did not have proper protocols in place. And as a result of that, they, as a result of that, they allowed people to get in there who should have never been vaccinated. And that's vaccines that Caymanians and residents should be having access to. So you got to keep an eye on every single government department. I got to be honest. I like Lizette. I think she does, by and large, a good job. But I also know that sometimes as a Caymanian, she's probably way too trusting of the people that we allow in here. And I say that because I know of another situation where a doctor at the HSA, and I'm still deciding how we're going to report this. I should do a full story on this because trust me, all of the details are there. But there's a certain physician at the HSA who allows his parents to come and visit him so that he can have a babysitter. Have we ever heard of immigration infraction? Nonetheless, he allows his parents to come into this jurisdiction and visits him. And they recently came in and they were allowed to take the vaccine. They're not residents. And so when we brought it to the attention of the management of the HSA, we heard, oh yeah, they're residents here. No, they're not. Let's be very, very frank. There is nothing about them that says that they're a resident. In fact, they were not even permitted to come in during COVID. If they were a resident, they would have been allowed to come in, folks. They were not permitted to come in. They're not residents on this island. And the irony of it is their son, who's a physician here, by extension, because of his employment contract with government, could be said to be a resident on island, but he doesn't even own a piece of property. So if he doesn't even own a piece of property, yes, he's here in a contract. So we count him as a resident, right? He obviously works with patients. Of course, we would want for him to get vaccinated. How can someone who doesn't even own property here, who's a renter, their parents come in every couple months or whatever to visit? How can we say that that individual is a resident? Absolutely crazy. I just saw my little Gucci friend go by. He's taking his time this morning. Good morning, Indira. Tony says the weather is -1 and snowing. Well, I tell you what, folks, the weather, there's been a storm that has hit Texas. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to this, but this Texas storm has been unbelievable. There are people dying from hypothermia. That's how cold it is in Texas because the power has been out and the people have no electricity, which means they have no heat. They cannot keep themselves warm. Now listen to this morning's headline. Millions of Texans wake up without safe drinking water after winter storm. Wow. A week of frigid weather and catastrophic events have unfolded in Texas. Everything from a pileup on the interstate that has killed dozens of people. There have been people who have had to shelter in place. I know you guys probably saw that one story about the delivery driver who had to shelter. She was like delivering food to people, and she actually had to shelter in place with those people because she got stuck in the storm. And they've been hanging out together trying to make, ends meet, I guess. So, Nicholas, thank you so much for tuning in. Good morning, Miss Irvelin. Miss Irvelin reminds us that nice people are in jail also. Absolutely. Being nice is not the criteria that determines whether or not you're capable of breaching COVID, apparently. So, we will keep an eye on that situation. We're yet to hear what is happening with all the other quarantine breaches. What's going on with the DPP's office? Are they now, after the Skylar Mack case, afraid to charge people? I'm a little bit confused. At least 26 people have died in Texas across the state since February the 11th as a result of the storm. Millions have lost power, forcing families to huddle over a fireplace, scavenge for firewood, or spend nights in their cars trying to stay warm. Because, if you had gas in the car, then you can turn the car on and you can get a little bit of heat from the car. This is a situation in Texas. Others spent hours searching for food as shelves emptied and weather conditions led to supply chain shortages. So my goodness, as if COVID wasn't enough of a situation around the world, now people in Texas in particular having to deal with this frigid temperature, which has caused pipes to burst, water disruptions for roughly half of the state's population. COVID relief efforts are at a standstill, including food banks. They've all had to shut down. Vaccine shipments delayed, and most appointments canceled. So more than a third of the continental US is recording below zero temperatures. I feel so sorry for them right now. This is crazy. Snow, icy roads, power outages, paralyzing cities across the country, sparking emergency declarations in several states. Good morning, Carol. Carol says, yes, they need to prosecute. So the National Guard has been called out in Texas. Kansas has asked residents to do all that they could to conserve power. Kentucky state officials said that people need to be cautious as more frigid winter weather is coming. And I mean, you've got to see the photos, folks. Almost 154 million people in the United States were under some sort of a winter weather alert as of Monday. This is according to the National Weather Service. Wind chill warnings or advisories are in effect for about 68 million people. Listen to this little bit of information. The cold air is so widespread that you could travel nearly 2,000 miles from the Rio Grande to the Mexican border to the St. Lawrence River on the Canadian border, all covered in winter storm warnings or watches. Wow. Millions of people without power. 5.1 million customers across the country have no power as of, this was last week. I think it's gotten worse since then. 4.2 million power outages, and the list just goes on and on and on. And in the meantime, what's his name? Ted Cruz was going on a vacation. So he is what is his current position? Is he the senator for Texas? So he was headed out of town. This was 3 days ago. This is yes, he's a senator, Texas senator. This is making worldwide news, folks. BBC and all over. Here the Americans are in the middle of especially Texas, of a very dire situation. And what does Ted Cruz do? Well, I'm not surprised because this is the guy who supported Trump to the very end. So his actions sound very Trump-esque. His poor state, the entire state, is suffering like nothing that we've seen in decades. And he jumps on a flight and he's headed out of the country to go to Mexico. Folks, if I tried to make this stuff up, I would probably be in a better position because this is so incredibly unbelievable. I'm going to pull up his picture. Funny enough, there's these celebrity trackers everywhere. So they actually caught him at the airport leaving. There he is. Can you believe it? At least he's wearing a mask. I guess that much. And ironic, a Texas mask. Heading out. This was Wednesday. He was caught at the airport going to Mexico. And that was as millions of people in Texas faced water shortages with reservoirs going empty, freezing temperatures, power blackouts, water treatment facilities and burst pipes were impacting homes. 13 million Texans have been told to boil water that could now be contaminated. This is how bad the situation is. And of course, Ted Cruz, who's a high-profile Republican who ran for presidency in 2016 and was a huge Trump supporter, was taking an international trip. Get this. This is, that you are low down, dirty. Now, this is just unbelievable. Morning, Damien and Jackie. Hear this, Rosita. Not only was he taking a vacation outside of the country, my apologies, to warmer weather, but he was leaving behind the dog. Who does that? Oh my God. Now, you guys know that here on CMR, we're animal lovers. Poor Snowflake, ironic name, Carla and Rosa. Poor Snowflake was being left behind by Ted Cruz. He doesn't even care about his own dog. Wow. My God. I don't even know what to say. So let me show you this picture of poor Snowflake. My goodness, poor little Snowflake. Let me just see if I can pull it up here. So, people are, of course, trolling him in terms of what he has now done. They're like, how on earth could you do this? Dude, do you have no heart? What type of person does this? And so look at this photo. This was taken by a New York Magazine reporter and tweeted on early Thursday. This is the senator's house. And do you guys see little Snowflake in the doorway? There's little Snowflake looking out like, Papa Ted, Where have you gone? You've left me. Wow. Unbelievable. Uh-huh. Power was out and Snowflake is locked inside. I guess Snowflake is a girl. Sounds like a girl's name. Snowflake was locked inside by herself. Well, he has issued a written statement by Thursday afternoon claiming that because schools were closed, he had booked the vacation for his young daughters who asked to take a trip with friends. The senator said he and his staff were in constant communication with state and local leaders to get to the bottom of what happened in Texas. My God, get to the bottom of weather. Really, dude? You're supposed to be there for your people. And this reminded me, quite interestingly enough, that, times like this is when you got to make sure you've got good leadership in place. Because when you have leaders that don't care about people and they don't care about, especially during a crisis, what is happening and what's going on, well, this is the sort of thing that selfish leaders do. They take a vacation right in the middle of a situation. All right, folks, we do have guests who are joining us, and I'm very much aware of the fact that they have time constraints. So we're going to pause our general conversation right there. There were a number of things that happened over the weekend that we will get back to in terms of a discussion. But we want to give our guests priority because they've taken time out of their busy schedules to join us this morning to talk about a very, very serious issue in the Cayman Islands, which is bullying in our schools. Many of you may not be aware of how serious this is, but one mother this morning is going to share with us really how her own child has had some health-related issues. And we're going to hear how serious those health-related issues are as a result of bullying in schools. So there is an anti-bullying association. I have heard of them, but their efforts to get legislative change in this country to protect your children has fallen on deaf ears. So we need to find out and figure out why that is. But first, we're going to hear their stories. Just remember, folks, that you can call in and participate in the conversation at any time that you would like to. We invite you to do so. You just click on the little link, which we're going to put in the comment section.
Yeah. It's the Cold Hard Truth News Podcast. Cold Hard Truth News Podcast. Come make we talk on the live broadcast. It's the Cayman #1 live talk show. Come make we talk where you go on the news.
And folks, without a doubt, we are the Cayman Islands #1 talk show. We're going to give you some stats later on to talk about that. But let's go ahead and bring in Nathina. We have Janet, who's joining us. And we also have Catherine. Now, Catherine, there's a light behind you that's giving you a little bit of a halo.
Okay.
I'm sure that's a light above your head.
I'll turn it off.
Yeah, so sometimes backlighting can be a little bit tricky. But thank you guys so much. All three of these ladies are mothers, and they are very, very concerned about what has been happening here in the Cayman Islands in relation to bullying. Good morning, ladies.
Backlighting, right?
Good morning.
Good morning. So who wants to go first? Janet, thank you so much for joining us. Nathina, thank you. And Catherine, thank you as well for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your organization, first of all. And then I want to get into your individual stories of why you think this is such an important topic and why we need to be fighting so hard to protect your children. So who wants to tell us a little bit about the anti-bullying organization?
I can go first, Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah. So The United Against Bullying Foundation started in April of 2018. And
Mhm.
this foundation all started because of my son's personal experience with bullying at school. It happened for a long time, for about 2 years at a private school at St. Catholic School. Um, the impact that it had on him was devastating. And so I thought it was important to, spread awareness and, just put the information out there. And, to my surprise, when I actually posted my story on Instagram and Facebook, the amount of feedback that I got from parents who have been experiencing the same thing, it was kind of surprising for me. And, so we decided to start a foundation just to spread awareness and get the word out there, and ultimately to fight for, legislation.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's how this all started. Kathy joined us as well. She's actually a founding member of the foundation, and we've been working together just to, spread awareness, get the word out there, and ultimately have an anti-bullying legislation passed.
Well, I'm surprised, but I'm not really. I only have a 4-year-old, so she's not really in the thick of it quite yet. But even at a young age, you can kind of observe certain behaviors that make you wonder, shall I put it that way, what children are being exposed to and what is going on in our communities, in our homes, more importantly. That the youngest of children seem to be engaged in oftentimes very inappropriate behavior. They don't know how to express themselves with their words and talk out their feelings. They resort immediately to hitting. And I think in order for us to address the broader issue of bullying, we need to understand why there is so much apparent violence in our homes and in our communities. So we're going to get to that part of the conversation because I think it has to be had. But um, you mentioned a really interesting thing here, Janet, that again, to me, it isn't surprising, but maybe a lot of people think it's surprising. And that is that we think that private schools are somehow insulated from these type of instances. So we've seen in recent months, there've been a lot of fight videos that have been happening. A lot of, kids picking on each other, fighting, and it's all been the public school videos. So I think in some sense, there are those of us who believe as Caymanians that, okay, if we send our children to private institutions and to private schools, they're somehow in a better environment and they're not going to be subjected to bullying. However, I know for a fact that that is not the case at all. I don't know if the private schools kind of do a better job of keeping it under wraps, but I am very, very much aware from CIS, the island's most expensive and prestigious school on island, to Catholic, prep, all of the public schools I have heard stories about in some form or another. And in fact, CIS has been particularly egregious to a number of parents who have reached out to me. Some parents have had to pull their children out of school because girls can be so incredibly mean. Now, Janet, is your child a young lady or a young boy, a young man?
It's a young man.
Yeah.
Yes.
But listen, girls can be just as mean when it comes to bullying each other. And I've heard of instances where kids have been so severely bullied at CIS that they couldn't eat in the common cafeteria area. They had to go sit in the guidance counselor's office. Kids are feeling suicidal. They're questioning their own self-worth. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And these issues are known issues. And, kids get into these little cliques within their schools. Oh, well, my mom is a Kathy Williams who's super rich or richer than your mom. and we're in the popular group and you're the new kid on the block, so you're not sort of thing. I mean, it's just amazing. And so many of the parents themselves, and someone just said this to me in a WhatsApp message. This message came in, said, "Thank you so much. I'm so glad." They said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad this is being addressed. Bullying in the workplace is another issue that needs to be addressed as well." So if we have adults that are bullying each other, adults that are part of the problem, parents and school administrators that are all turning a blind eye to what's happening in the school, and there is no legislative framework, what hope do we have?
None.
Nathina?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what is your take on this, and perhaps if you could share a little bit about your story. Janet, we're going to come back to what happened to your child, because I think people need to know what sort of behavior we're talking about and what the impact is on our children as a result of the bullying.
Okay. Well, I've been reporting to the school that my son was going to, because currently my son is home because of his excessive seizures.
Wow.
I reported to the school from last year that numerous of kids have been bullying my son. And even in October last year, he got punched in the eye, and I got called to come and collect him. And I went and I asked to meet with the parents. The school told me I can't. And I said, even if you guys mediate, they say, no, it's not necessary. It continued, and my son started having headaches all the time, complaining that he having headaches. And I went back to the school again, asking for help to see how they can resolve the issue. And it seemed like it had calmed down for a little bit, or if it did continue, my son didn't say anything, because he says that when he reports it to the teachers, they say if they don't see it, it didn't happen.
Wow. If they don't see it, it didn't happen?
Correct.
Adults are saying if they don't see something, it didn't happen?
Yes.
Okay. That's the equivalent of saying a tree fell in the forest, and because you didn't see or hear it, the tree didn't really fall. That's ridiculous.
Right. And I called education department because an incident also happened in November. My son defended himself against a bully and he got suspended. And they say that he was the aggressor. I said, how can he be the aggressor for defending himself? And I called education department asking for help and telling them, say, I don't think it's fair for my son to be suspended from school. And they told me I have to go to the school. I have to deal with the school first. And if I don't like the response from the school, then they will get involved. I did as they requested. I emailed several people. I emailed my politician in my district, and I even sent him a message on Facebook. I sent several individuals messages on Facebook. Nobody responded to me. I got a meeting with the school, the guidance counselor, and the teachers that my son reported the situation to. And they say that they have a no hitting policy in the school. It's immediate suspension. That's their policy.
So your son was, when you say bullying, give our listeners an exact idea of what he was having to go through. And I'm glad that you said earlier that there may have been periods of time when he was actually hiding stuff from you, because a lot of kids do that, and parents don't know the severity of a situation until it's almost too late. So tell us what he has shared with you, and what, was some of the bullying that he was having to endure specifically.
He was getting a lot of name calling, and there was these year 6 boys, because my son is in year 5, taking set on him, telling him he's going to die, pushing him and hitting him, he's going to die. And that was 2 days before he had his first seizure.
Oh my God.
And sorry.
It's okay.
When I called the school to identify the situation, they told me the bullies got a
Mm.
detention to write
Wow.
lines not to bully.
Wow.
That's all their punishment was.
After telling your son things like he was going to die. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. Take your time. It's okay. Folks, I mean, the reality here, as you can see, as a mother, you know, we can all feel this pain, I think, even if you're not a mother or father, but in particular, when it is your own child. I mean, trust me, I feel in this moment, just listening to her story, I feel angry and upset myself. And we should feel that way about anybody's child, because
Mhm.
the bottom line is it could be your child. That's exactly what we're trying to tell you this morning. Um, how old is your child being in year 5? How old would he be?
He's
That's
9.
He's 9 years old.
9.
Oh my God. Wow. That's very sad. And so the children that are accused of doing it are just slightly older than him.
Correct.
Louis says that this could be a criminal case, but you've reached out to school administrators, politicians,
Yes.
and no one seems to be able to help you.
No. Nobody even made an attempt to even call me to see how my son is doing. The principal called me the day before my son was discharged to ask me how my son is doing, and that was it.
A 9-year-old is under so much stress and pressure from being bullied at school that he has actually had physical seizures.
Every day, my son has at least 20 seizures.
And he wasn't having these seizures before. What have the doctors said about the seizures?
They're calling them pseudo seizures because it's mentally related. It's not physical seizures. So
Mhm.
he has to get a lot of counseling, and he's diagnosed as severely depressed and stressed.
Wow.
And
So they
even
can't find a physical cause at all.
no,
So
we have to
basically, it's
find the
because of,
triggers.
I cannot even imagine. And I think we all probably, a lot of us at some stage went through, you know, bullying and different things. I think it just depends really. But I'm shocked to think that a 9-year-old is being subjected to this, causing him physical repercussions, and no one is doing anything about it. What about his parents? Does he have parents? I mean, not his parents, but the parents of the kids bullying. Do they know what their child or children are doing to your son?
The school won't even allow me to meet or even interact with the parents, even after I requested it.
So you don't know what the parents know or what they're doing about it or anything of the sort.
No, I don't.
Wow. Unbelievable. I find that you know, trying not to be critical of the school administrators, but the way in which they handle things just seems to be so odd to me. Even with the school fights, I mean, we had a whole list of suggestions of things that they could do to address that. And to this day, despite something like kids saying there were 10 to 15 fights a day, the ministry has never made a statement about it. They've never, to the best of my knowledge, called an emergency PTA meeting. Nothing. It just boggles my mind that they have their heads stuck in the sand while poor Nathina, Janet, and other parents are struggling with this issue. And we have children, a 9-year-old child who is having multiple seizures per day, suffering as a result of this. Where's the government? Where's our administrators? Where's the civil service? These people are charged with protecting your children. Janet, you hear her story, and you guys are part of this organization, but you have said that unfortunately, Nathina's story isn't unique in the sense that, you know, her son is being bullied. It might be unique in the impact that it's having on her son. But what kind of statistics do we have on how prevalent and how bad bullying is here in the Cayman Islands? Is anyone even keeping track?
Sandy, I feel so bad for Nathina because I know how she feels and I know what she's going through, even though I think her situation is so much, more devastating than mine was. But to be frank, I call sometimes maybe 2 calls per week, or 2 to 3 calls every 2 weeks, just parents, people who I know that, are going through the same thing. Their daughter is being bullied on social media by, peers from school, posting pictures, naked pictures, and posting the students' face of those pictures, posting them. It's really, really sad. And what is more sad is that no one in government is really doing anything. They're not taking the situation seriously, and it's not knocking on their front door. It's not happening to their child.
Mm.
Seems to care.
Well, can I tell you something? You guys might actually be surprised to hear this. It is actually knocking on their front door. Here's a situation that I know for a fact. This is not hearsay, and I'm not looking for confirmation on this. The Minister of Health, Dwayne Seymour, has several daughters, and at least one of his daughters was the subject of bullying at CIS. Again, this ultra prestigious school that people think because they overpay to send their children there that somehow they're getting a better education. So much so that his child requested to be moved from the school. And the sort of things that she was having to be subjected to, because apparently it doesn't matter that your father is a minister of health. It doesn't matter that he's a government official. A lot of those kids have no respect for anyone, regardless of position or stature or whatever. And, we often talk about on this program, privileged people who unfortunately raise little privileged kids who don't understand the realities of the fact that they live in a Caribbean community, and they go around making fun of Caribbean children because of their skin color, because of the type of hair that we have, because of our very accents. And so these kids would take a marker, mark their skin, a black marker, and say, oh, look, so-and-so touched me.
That's true.
And my skin has now turned black because so-and-so touched me. This is how they are making fun of each other, and particularly Caymanian children. Mm-hmm. It's shocking. And when I hear stories like this, I get so mad and I get so upset because, I'm like, if that was my daughter, I'm sorry, but I feel like I'd be stringing somebody up. But of course, responding in kind isn't the appropriate response.
Yeah. My son went through the same thing, same name calling. My son's complexion is a bit darker, and they called him a effing nigger.
Wow.
Told him to go kill himself. They would criticize his hair texture. These are the things that he had to go through almost every day,
Oh my God.
Years. And I had to get the police involved. And that was when they suspended the boys for 2 days.
That was it.
Days. One of the boys left the school and started a new school. And the boy, which is the main boy, got suspended for 2 days. And that was it, Sandy.
If I can just say something, if I can just add to what you ladies are saying, I I think the situation that Janet and Nithina both are facing are perfect examples of the need for us to really have the legislation implemented, because the draft anti-bullying schools regulations actually sets out a procedure to be followed by all teachers if there is any type of bullying report, or if anybody, any student complains or states that they've been bullied. If the teacher fails to report that incident within 72 hours, then there are disciplinary actions for that teacher. Another thing that legislation does, it also requires training to be conducted for the teachers, for students, because I think that's the excuse, is that, oh, well, like what Nathina said, the teacher said, well, if she didn't see it, it didn't happen. And so we see where we have teachers in the school that don't know how to identify or
respond
with the bullying behavior. Going back to what Janet was saying about, or not Janet, so I think it was you, Sandra, you mentioned the Minister of Health and his daughter being bullied. I think that's another issue that we have, is we see where we have, Minister of Health is probably one of, but we probably might have like 3 or 4 legislators in Parliament now that have children in schools. And so again, it's like, if you don't have kids in school, or if you're not, susceptible to this type of behavior with your children, then it's not going to be a concern. There's no need to push or drive this legislation. So I don't think that the government hasn't done anything. Going back to what Janet was saying, because the Law Reform Commission, they give them credit. They've done a lot of work on this legislation. And right now, it's just, the regulations and the draft bill are just sitting either in cabinet or with the AG. So again, it's finding, the political will to expedite this and make this a priority. And we see that we don't have that.
And
I would like to say
if
something.
it's sitting on someone's desk somewhere, then clearly that is a failing, and that's a problem. I mean, if the legislation has been drafted, we've seen bills drafted in shorter amount of time and passed, in record time. Michelle says, my daughter was bullied by a group of girls at John Gray High School. I monitored the bullying on social media and took all the evidence to the police. I demanded a meeting with the parents and the police, and the school did nothing, as it was out of school hours. The police were very good in handling the situation. So here's the thing, folks. Despite the fact that there may be no specific anti-bullying legislation, and I think Kathy Wilkes mentioned some very good things that legislation would implement: mandatory training of not just teachers, but anyone, kind of like what they do with sexual abuse training now as part of the children's law. Anyone who has contact with children should be forced to attend some sort of anti-bullying training program, because it allows them to be on the alert for certain types of behavior that they need to be very, very cognizant of. So I think that that's incredibly important and necessary, and that should be embedded in legislation. But as Catherine also says, it does give the opportunity in regulations to really pinpoint all of the steps that should be taken once an incident is reported. So very much like the equivalent of child abuse, you have a mandatory reporting obligation. All teachers, anybody who works with children who recognize a bullying situation, if a child comes to them with bullying, there should be, just like child abuse, a mandatory requirement on them to report it to some sort of respective agency. Now, we have the MASH unit, which already exists, and they deal with child abuse issues. It would make logical sense to me if we could somehow attach this to the MASH unit, because they have a conglomerate of different agencies, from social services to, someone from the police department, a representative from all of these different agencies working under one umbrella and one head to protect your children. This is an extension of that. So this could easily be done under the umbrella of the MASH unit. But my concern is, despite there being no specific anti-bullying legislation, there is legislation to address what Michelle is talking about, which is social media bullying, online bullying. So there's some sort of legislation already in place for the police to get involved and to make, children and their parents held criminally liable. Why is that much not even being done?
Sandy.
Yes, when in 2018, when I reported my son to the MASH unit, they actually said they could do at the time because they were minors. The boys were 13 years old. They said they were minors. I also went to the Human Rights Commission, to find out, what they could do because my son was out of school. He wasn't able to go to school because he was scared of school and being bullied and just experiencing everything that he was facing. And they said there's nothing they could do. So all these entities are there, but you go to them with a problem and they can't help you. So why are they there? What do they do?
That's interesting. So because they're minors, the law can't deal with them. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, I'm not quite sure that I even understand the logic behind that sort of situation. We have a few comments here. So Irvelyn is asking, can't she find another school to put him in? But that's not the solution.
That's not the solution. No.
That's not even a Band-Aid, Irvelyn. I mean, moving him to another school does what? That just tells him to run away from bullies? Like,
the problem is it's the victim that usually ends up having to move.
Yeah, I think she was referring to the victim. Like, why not just move him to another school? But that's not the solution.
No, it's not.
Sharon says that my daughter was bullied at John Gray, and I was constantly leaving work to go to the school. Her second year there, I went to education department and told Mr. Levy she has to move, or else she will end up dead or jail. She's moved to Clifton Hunter and left there with the prefect. So this idea that the victim always has to accommodate the perpetrators, the bullies, and the victim has to be moved around, I'm very, very uncomfortable with. And when someone said to me earlier that this is just the tip of the iceberg, the tip of this discussion, because it's happening in the workplace, my mind immediately went to this woman who was recently assaulted at her workplace by her Speaker of the House. And as parents, how do you have a conversation to your children about appropriate behavior, inappropriate behavior, when the very leaders of this country have been convicted of harassment, bullying, assault, and that sort of thing? What do you tell your parents, your kids, Janet and Nathina? Do they ever ask you about, because I have a 4-year-old daughter, and she asks me a lot of questions sometimes, and I go, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to really try to explain this. But she pays attention to the behavior of others around her, both children, like children in school, as well as adults, and she'll question certain behavior. Do your kids question you about bad behavior that they see adults engaging in that makes you wonder, maybe that's where it starts, the examples that we are setting for children in our homes?
That is true.
Other places?
Yes, my son asks me that a lot. And even the way some parents talked in front of their children, swearing and all of that, it sets a poor example because the kids bring it to school.
Yeah.
And on top of that, too, the schools need to stop leaving the parents out of the discussion. And that is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Because even when my son got suspended, and I said, well, my son not getting suspended from school, the school told me if I brought him, they'll bring the police to me. So the school do not allow the parents, because before, I know, because I used to work education department, before a child is suspended from school, they call the parents in for a meeting. They no longer do that. It's a phone call. Your child is suspended. We're sending him home with his letter. And that's what I got.
So your child was suspended?
Yes.
I don't understand that, but he's the victim.
Correct. And they call you and let you know he's suspended, and that's it. And you have to deal with it. He cannot come to school for the 24 hours that he's suspended for.
See, again, going back to that point, the draft legislation actually addresses that by ensuring that the student who has been the victim of bullying and the student who has engaged in bullying and the family members of a student who has been the victim of bullying are all required to participate in counseling. So again, that's the problem, is a lot of these students that are the student that is acting in the behavior, or what am I trying to say, the bully.
The bullies, yeah.
Yeah, the bully, oftentimes they have issues, underlying issues. They've been bullied themselves. So it's really trying to get to the bottom of the issue, you know, and that's not happening. And I think Nathina really had a good point. We lead by example, you know, so the best way to teach your children how to behave is by, you know, conducting yourself, you know, treating others kindly, you know, having respect. And that to me is a more important lesson than just telling your child what to do or what not to do.
Of course, because I mean, our kids are living by example. And this is why I am particularly concerned that we have such a high rate of bullying. Someone mentioned earlier, oh, well, this kind of behavior dates back to the 1980s. So have we been a dysfunctional community all of this time and no one was recognizing the seriousness of it? Listen, folks, we have had a young child effectively kill himself a number of years ago. I don't know if Cayman people have forgotten this, but this young man, I think he may have been in high school, hung himself in his family home in the Prospect area. No one ever talked about it. No one ever said, why would a young man, you know, take his own life? What on earth is going on here that are causing our young men and young girls to be suicidal, to have mental health issues, to be suffering from depression and all of these other things?
But Janet spoke of it earlier.
Yeah.
If it's not affecting me, you know, then it's not my problem. And we've lost that togetherness as a country. And what we need to do is we need to come together and support each other. And when we see someone experiencing like this particular situation with Nathina, or like with Janet, when Janet was having the situation with her son, you know, just rallying together. We get upset with foreign nationals that come here and protest, but what are they showing us? They're showing us the power of, you know, being a solid team. You know, they show us what solidarity looks like, you know, and even though they're just small in numbers, they still can accomplish so much more than we can as Caymanians.
Do our children have, and I'm asking this already knowing the answer, but do they have an effective voice and an effective outlet to express themselves?
No.
So, you know, I had last year, and because of COVID and a number of different things, there's been a slight delay, but I had some young people approach me saying that they wanted their own show and their own program on CMR. And I thought it was such an interesting and unusual request. And when I sat down with one of them, he basically said, listen, we don't have a voice in this community. At least we don't feel like we have one. The topics that we want to talk about and the issues that we want to talk about, we don't feel like our parents are necessarily listening. We don't feel like the community is listening. And we think that because of how CMR is, like, you know, you would give us the opportunity and we could have these frank and open discussions and maybe people would actually listen to us. And I thought that that was so interesting. Now, these are middle and high school age kids, but I can't help but wonder how many even younger children are feeling that no one is listening to them and no one is really hearing them.
Sadly, the young adults feel that way as well. You know, just walking through the community and talking to them, they feel like their voices don't matter, like no one cares about them or their issues. So clearly there's a gap that we need to fill.
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Yeah, that's how my son felt his you know, whole situation at school when he reported it to adults, the teachers, and they basically did nothing. You know, he felt like they didn't care about him. They didn't care what happened to him. They didn't listen, you know. So yeah, our young people really
and I mean, Janet,
express themselves.
Yeah. I mean, Janet, you're listening to your child. Nathina is listening to her son. Imagine the poor children who don't even have anyone at home who is listening and trying to fight for them.
Yep.
You know, it's that much more difficult. I mean, I remember, you know, when I'm hearing conversations like this, you kind of go back in time to your own childhood. And I had a difficult time because number one, I had to transition into a completely different environment when I moved to the States. I was only 9 years old, but the kids in the US couldn't understand me. They were like, they used to say to me, "Are you speaking a foreign language?" I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I'm speaking English, but because of my Caymanian accent, you know, it took a minute for a couple years for them to really, and then there was just so many differences than where I was coming from. There was cultural shock. They were hyper focused a lot on like skin color, and everybody had their little groups in the cafeteria. So there was a huge adjustment for me as a young child. And as a result of that, I got picked on and bullied and stuff as well. And I was just kind of thinking, when you don't have a parent, because my aunt was a lot older that I went to live with, and she didn't always understand what was happening. So there was an instance on, you know, a school bus where this guy gets up and literally smacks me. Well, it started before the school bus, but it kind of ended on the school bus, and I had to physically defend myself. Now, thankfully, I had, even at that age, you know, a very strong personality. And I'm like, this is wrong. You're not going to touch me without there being immediate consequences. And one of those immediate consequences is I was prepared to defend myself. And yes, I strung him up and I was going to tear him apart, you know, and then everybody's like, no, 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 you know, you got to go to the principal. And I'm like, okay, we already did that with the first incident and nothing happened. And then I got everyone on the school bus to sign. I did a petition. I got everybody in the school bus to sign my petition about what happened. And when the school responded by removing the bus driver, who happened to have been his aunt, and she did nothing, she sat in her seat the whole time that this assault happened. When they removed her and wrote her up for the incident, they contacted my aunt. My aunt was so oblivious and so clueless. Her response to me was like, "Oh, you almost caused this woman her job." And I was like, even as a high school kid, I'm like, what? That's your concern? That I almost caused this woman who sat in her bus seat while I was being attacked her job? So I wonder how many other parents out there are not warriors like you, Janet, are not warriors like you, Nathina, or Catherine, and who, unbeknownst to them, really, maybe they don't fully understand, they are throwing their poor children to the wolves to be eaten alive.
And to that, Sandra, that's where United Against Bullying comes in, right? Because the aims and objective of United Against Bullying is to educate parents, students, teachers on what bullying behavior looks like and how you can address it, you know? Because for so long, it has been something that it's the white elephant in the room that nobody talks about. And kids come home and complain to parents, and parents don't even identify. I saw a post a few years back where a mom was commenting on her child being at school. The kids were talking about the color of her skin looking like feces. And when I saw it, you know, right away, I thought that is bullying, you know? Mm-hmm. So again, I'm excited with what we've done so far with UAB. I think now a lot of people, parents in particular, and even educators are now starting to really identify bullying behavior and how to address it. Now all we need is we need to get this law passed so that we can find a way to control it in the schools, and then hopefully after that in the workplace.
So Atlas says, good morning. I'm sorry I've missed nearly everything. Well, not yet, not everything, Atlas, but I've experienced bullying in Cayman before to the 3rd degree, and it affected me mentally and physically. I wish someone pulled me out for homeschooling. But Atlas, that's not the answer. We need to start raising children who are more sensitive. But like I said, the issue starts with the adults lacking sensitivity and empathy. So Johan says, has the Ministry of Education and Department of Education plus MP for the constituency provided an update or prepared a written report? Well, I think the response is none of that has been done. Chantel is feeling particularly upset. We have
Johan's question, the Law Reform Commission recently updated their website. So that's how you can tell that the draft legislation is now with the AG because the final report went to him in November.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sue is also recommending moving him to another school. I don't think that that's the answer. And national anti-bullying policy, not yet.
Sandy, and
Mhm.
another thing that should be done at the schools anytime a situation happens, which I
Mhm.
don't see it happening, an incident report
Mhm.
needs to be done that should also go to education department with a sign off that it was resolved.
Right.
And a copy should also come to the parents. I've never gotten one.
Wow.
And even when my son passed out of the school and the ambulance came for him,
Wow.
definitely I know that day on January 22nd, an incident report should have been done.
Mhm.
And I did not get a copy. I did not get a call.
Yeah. And Sandy, I think why it's happening is because a lot of the schools are in denial.
Mhm.
It's like, they're just sweeping it under the rug because they
Mhm.
have their so-called reputation to protect.
Mhm.
So they do not want to admit that they have the problem. They
Yep.
don't.
Yeah. It's like the situation right now with the drugs on campus at John Gray. No one has talked about it. The ministry hasn't mentioned it. When I asked the police last week, they're like, "Oh, go ask the ministry," because they're only in a supportive role, and we're only hearing about it because parents are saying drug task forces at school right now looking for weed brownies. Here's another comment that has come in on social media. They said the PC hearing is Tuesday and Wednesday of this week as well. And the LGBTQ are some of the most bullied in this country, from parliaments to the schools. Apparently, labeling someone an MF lesbian is a defense to a drunken assault as well. And let us remember that that is what has happened with our Speaker of the House. In most places in the world, that would have been an aggravating assault that would have elevated this to not just, or those words would have been an aggravated factor that would have made this not just a common assault, but this would have been some sort of an aggravated assault and a hate crime. And only in the Cayman Islands do we not even in our courts recognize a hate crime. We think that that's okay because she is allegedly a lesbian or she has lesbian friends, for the minister, my apologies, for the Speaker of the House to use that as an excuse. Children are watching this, folks. Every single time you as a parent sees someone who's a member of the LGBT community and you have something negative to say about them, or you name call them or whatever, and you think that that's acceptable behavior, right? Your children are listening to you and they are learning that exact same behavior from you. So you are the perfect or not so perfect example, I should say, of what your children should or shouldn't be doing. And they are paying attention.
That's
And
true.
that is really, really scary to me because I know how so many people in this community feel so strongly about the LGBT community because I have had to hear the comments. And I'm just like, wow, we have racism in this community. No one ever wants to have that discussion either. We have classism, but it's not as acceptable for you to go around calling someone the N word in public, or, I'm sure a lot of you probably still do it in your
That
private homes.
that
But
also happened to my daughter in John Gray in November. The receptionist called my daughter a nigger, and when I confronted her about it, she said she never said such a thing.
what? The receptionist that works there?
Yes, and when I approached her, she said no, that didn't happen. She didn't call her that. She just said that she was rude amongst the kids that was in there because they were making a lot of noise. She didn't use the word nigger.
Wow. Gigi says this topic is so important because our future star with her kids, God bless your family, Sandy, finally someone is trying to do something about it. I struggled in silence with my son and nobody did nothing about it. I was ignored for 6 years. Well, folks, we have Nathina, Janet, and Catherine here this morning, women and mothers and people in this community who are refusing to be ignored. They have formed an association that is trying to educate people. And I think all of you as parents now who are listening to this program, you have the ability to contact them and to get involved and to really make this a movement. We can stamp out bullying. It's not an easy fix. And in my mind, it's not just about legislation either. It's about what example from within our homes are we teaching our children? How many of us are having conversations about appropriate behavior, inappropriate words? How do we resolve issues? So if we feel like we don't like someone or we're having an issue with them, what is the appropriate response to that? It's not to name call people and to hit people and to bully people. You know, there's an old saying about sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt you. That's a lie. I don't know whoever came up with that, but that is one of the biggest lies ever that we tell our children. How many of us have said something like that to our kids, trying to convince them that words have no power, when in fact, words are some of the most powerful things in the world?
True.
So I think that we all need to start having the discourse, in our communities, in our churches. Again, where are the churches? They're always so silent on topics that matter to us. The only topic they want to talk about is the LGBT community. Our legislators need to be talking about this. Catherine pointed out that most of them are not current parents, but almost all of them have had kids at some point or another. So they should all be involved in this conversation. This is about saving our children. So Rosa says the school bullies should be held accountable now and be punished. If nothing is done now, then just imagine what they'll do in the future. Exactly. Well, they're the ones who end up beating up people and, at their workplace or assaulting people at work. Dorothy, thank you so much for tuning in. She says it is racism and it is another pandemic here on this island, in the schools and the workplace. Liliana, thank you so much for your comment. Liliana says this is really bad. What is going on at schools, and government or someone needs to do something. So some serious comments here. Louis says school officials need training to be able to ID bullying and take appropriate action. Absolutely. And held accountable for reports that are being unnoticed. Well, Louis, Nathina has said they're not even doing official reports. So not only is this probably extremely underreported from kids, because a lot of kids are afraid to speak up, a lot of kids are afraid to reach out to their parents, but even the schools themselves have no obligation. And going back to Kathy's point, this is why legislation should make this mandatory. The schools themselves apparently have no obligation, teachers, to file reports. So if they don't file a report, what action can Nathina take to say, listen, this law or this regulation says you are supposed to, this act of parliament, as they're now going to be called, you are supposed to file a report and you haven't done so. So now, you're in contravention of what is required of you. Every school should have an anti-bullying program and an anti-bullying plan.
Sandy, just to add to that point, my son went to a school, St. Ignatius Catholic School, and reached out to the Ministry of Education. They said because that's a private school, there's nothing they can do. They have no control. And, that...
Excuse me, Janet. The Cayman Islands government funds private schools. So let me just say this about private institutions, because the ways in which they operate really a lot of times concern me. There are Caymanian children who are trying to get a space in private schools who are put on a waiting list for 5 or 6 years. And there are people who literally come off of a plane, and within weeks, you see them posting on all these Real Women of Cayman groups saying that their child is starting in a school that other kids have been on a waiting list forever. That's a whole other conversation that we're going to have one day. But the truth of the matter is the Cayman Islands government subsidizes private institutions since they have made the decision a long time ago to separate public and private schools. So our taxpayer money is funding private institutions that don't even want to accept our children. And then the government comes up with some ridiculous story that they have no control over organizations that they are funding. You know the level of control they have? I bet you during COVID, they had control when they said all schools must shut down. You didn't hear private schools saying, well, I'm going to stay open because you're a private school and your government, you can't tell us what to do. So that seems like a real convenient excuse for me, Janet, that I'm not impressed with. But that's what they told you.
That's what they told me.
Wow.
Yep. They have no control over what the private school does, and there's nothing they could do to help.
Everybody passing the buck. Kathy, in
Mhm.
terms of legislation, does that sound right to you that government is saying that they have no control over private school?
Well, the regulations actually, there is also an amendment to the Education Amendment Law 2020. So it actually says that schools are required to implement anti-bullying policies, and all of the regulations are extended to, it says here, I just lost the spot, but it also includes private schools as well.
I mean, of course, right? I mean, that only seems logical. Like, I can't believe
It
anyone would tell
says
you that a private
government,
school.
a government school, an assisted or independent school. So
Mhm.
it covers all schools that are mandatory.
Yeah, but that's what I was told by on Teeth. That's what she told me because I emailed
Really?
directly
Mm.
what she told me. You know, she's sorry about the situation, but there's nothing she can do because it's a private school.
Wow.
Well, the way the
Well,
law is drafted, it removes any doubt as to who it would apply to.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't even seem any logical. It doesn't seem logical to me, really, what she has said, and I question the merits of that even now. But Eden says, sounds like juvenile criminal charges need to be brought. Kathy's absolutely right about competent training to recognize and deal with bullying. Also, we're looking at hate crimes here. Kids learn from somewhere. What are the home situations? Exactly what I'm saying. We know where they're learning it from. And, parents need to be held responsible for the actions of their children, and they need to be held accountable as well. Now, I kind of understand to some extent this concept of, maybe not wanting parents to get together because that could escalate tensions between parents. But if it's done in the right environment with someone who's able to oversee this, I think that having parents meet can be very conducive, but you need obviously an appropriate moderator. Now, Nathina does have to leave us. She's got some obligations this morning, including work. Nathina, any final words? First of all, I'm very, very sorry about what has been happening to your son, who's only 9 years old. I am hoping that there is some resolution ahead for him. How is he doing now? I know you said that he's at home. What's the future prognosis? You've got him in counseling. What next?
He has to go back to Health City for more investigations, for him to do more evaluation on him and run more tests. He has to do an MRI. Up to Saturday and Sunday, my son fainted twice and hit his head front ways and back ways.
Oh my gosh.
And up to last night, my son was out for almost 45 minutes and started biting his tongue.
Oh my God.
And my other children are also suffering because they can't sleep. And my mom, who recently had a stroke, is the only person away from my brother and my children to help. And I don't think it's fair that I should have to use my vacation to stay home with my son because he needs me. I think there should be something special in place for situations like these, that you don't need to use your vacation to be with your children. Because my son needs me now, and it's hard. I can't be home.
So Nathina is bringing out another point that is really, really important here. Again, what support mechanisms are in place to help parents who are having to endure with something like this? So it's one thing to, as you're trying to address the issues, but in this case, health issues have manifested themselves as a result of the bullying. And none of us have workplaces that care really that much about mental health of their workers, much less the workers' children, and being able to take some sort of compassionate leave for things like this. I mean, this is really
And
incredible.
what is 5 days? I've used my 5 days already.
Yeah. Wow. Nithina, please keep in touch with us. I think this is the first of what should be many conversations for this community. We will be keeping your son in our thoughts and prayers. And if there's anything more that we can do, please reach out. You know, as a community, we have to support you and we have to support your child. And I'm sorry that you are in this situation. It really, really breaks my heart. I mean, it makes me angry and upset. And, you know, I think that we should be doing more. And I will see, you know, I know that there's the Wayne Panton Foundation. I don't know how much they can assist, but maybe I can reach out to Mr. Wayne Panton. He has experienced the loss of a child himself. In the most tragic of circumstances. So maybe we could reach out to them and see if there's anything that they can do to assist you also.
Thank you.
Okay, Nathina, thank you so much. Folks, these conversations are very, very hard to have. But I do want to thank you all for your participation this morning, because there was a time when I would sit here and I would have conversations about children being abused or different things, and the silence was deafening. No one was participating in the conversations. And I have so many comments here that I'm going to try to go through now. So thank you guys so much for being here. At one point, we had almost 200 of you. Now we have 185 of you. The numbers remain high. You're very much engaged in this topic, which says to me that it's definitely impacting a lot of you and a lot of your children. But thank you for caring about a topic like this. Because I know when we have, you know, salacious conversations, everybody wants to hear those, but these are the important things that are impacting our families. So I thank you. Marshall says, that's crazy to talk about them being minors. If minors go and steal or shoot someone, I'm sure they will do something then. Of course they will. Morna says, I have a grandson that goes to Clifton Hunter School, and he's been bullying. I think she means bullied, and the school always sent him home for a week. But those that cause the bullying remain in school for their wrongdoings. So I took it upon my own hands and went there and did what I had to do. It's very sad. Well, Morna, you got to be more specific. What did you do? What was the resolution? I mean, we all want to know. Louis is asking about Bonaventure. That's for troubled boys, but I don't know how much that helps. This young lady whose name is written in Arabic says that nobody cares, is the feeling that she gets. Rachel shares that her daughter was also bullied for years and had to end up moving her to another school. Wow, because of the inaction of the school. Eden says we're giving power to the bullies. Forcing the victims to move schools is no solution at all. Discipline the bullies and get all up in where they're learning it from. Yes, well, again, that would require us holding everybody accountable in the chain, from our leaders to us as parents, you know, and that accountability has to be had. I mean, I agree with you, Eden. It's coming from somewhere. And oftentimes, let me just put this on record. You will find that bullies are damaged individuals. And the vast majority of cases, nobody likes a bully. But when you really start to dig a little bit deeper into who these bullies are, you will find out that they themselves are likely victims of somebody else. So sometimes they're being bullied in their own homes. They're being subjected to abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, emotional, psychological abuse in their homes. They might have older kids who are bullying them and doing stuff to them. And there's a belief system, and there's actually a whole book about this, that hurt people hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
And so trust me when I tell you, I know nobody wants to sympathize with a bully, but oftentimes that's exactly what they need. is for someone to sympathize with them and to pull apart what is actually happening in the life of a bully, because there's so much more to who they are. And if we don't address those issues, we're kind of only half fixing the problem with, yes, they need to be held accountable for their actions, and yes, we will punish them. But again, we've got leaders in this community who take light of the fact that they themselves need counseling. They themselves are struggling and need emotional help. And they play lip service to that, but they don't actually do it. Kathy, you are a wife and a mother, and in our first conversations with Segment, you've even expressed how your family has gone through some trying times with the illness of your husband. And even a situation like that puts a lot of stress and strain on the entire family, including children.
Yep, definitely. And I don't think that there were any direct issues with behavior from my children, but again, it came from having open discussions with my kids about what we were facing and just constant reassurance, that what we were dealing with was just temporary. But going back to what you were saying earlier, the National Drug Council had done a survey, I can't remember when, but it was a few years back. And most of the persons that did the survey in the prison had been bullied when they were in school. So again, it shows that we really have to find a way to get early intervention and address the persons or the students that are bullying, so we can find out what exactly is it that they're dealing with, and find out a way to address that, so that these are our children too. Pulling them out of school, suspending them, expelling them, putting them in boys' home, that is not the solution to the problem. They're still going to live in our community later, and if we don't address it, then it's going to be a big problem in a few years. Exactly. So I'm hoping to see, a lot more early intervention. One of the things that I would like to see in the near future is the Yolandi Ford report spoke about a youth diversional program. And that is something that it's a program where students or children aren't directed to the courts, but it gives access to, counselors, and it gives access to persons who are able to address the issues that these children that are, let's just call them at-risk youth, that they're, displaying.
Right. And the earlier the better.
Yeah, we have to find creative ways to address the problem rather than just throwing our children, in a facility.
Yeah, and making early criminals of them, for sure.
Yes, exactly.
I just wanted to add that, over the course of the weekend, I've seen government officials who attended the mental health symposium. They're supporting that. But what about bullying? Bullying contributes to mental health situations.
Absolutely.
So why not tackle the issue so that we spend a lot of time finding solutions and addressing the problem. Tackle the issue.
Yeah. And thank you for reminding us too, Janet, that over the weekend, the Wayne Panton Foundation did host a mental health symposium. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend. I really, really wanted to go, but some other prior commitments prevented that from happening. So thank you for reminding us. Louise said, I take bullying into my own hands. Bullies only respond to angry parents. Therefore, parents shouldn't waste their time with principals or calling the police. Defend your children, period. Scare the hell out of these bullies and pathetic parents. I don't know, Louise, that is the answer. That's obviously very heavy-handed. But listen, I think as a parent, that is your initial response. Like, oh, I'm going to string this kid up. I'm going to, slap them myself. But that doesn't resolve anything. And this is the problem. Violence begets violence. So if your response is to go grab this kid by the arm and give him a good shake, in the moment, you might scare him. But trust me, the long-term result of that isn't going to be any sort of a resolution. We just become a more violent community.
That's
This
true.
is why I keep saying to parents, I want us all as a community to revisit this issue of corporal punishment in our homes. I know we were all raised with believing that the Bible says, spare the rod and spoil a child. That analogy talks about being a shepherd with his sheep. I have never seen a shepherd beat a sheep.
Mhm.
It is gentle guidance, folks.
And in addition to that, just as parents, not always having these rose petal, glasses, but accepting that our children may do things that we may not be happy about, and be approachable to other persons. Like for example, if your kid is being a bully and a parent comes to approach you to have an open discussion about it, rather than, saying that your child is perfect and your child doesn't do anything wrong, be
Mhm.
open to having discussions with parents and trying to see how you can address the issue, without it escalating. But that's the problem, is that we can't even have dialogue amongst each other,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I mean, I know you spoke about that, you couldn't go to the parents and speak to them about the behavior of their children because they felt their children didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah,
But some children who display the bullying behavior, though, speaking to them does not do anything. It
yeah.
doesn't make a difference. Because when, I mean, one of the bullies that that was bullying my son, we have spoken to him, his parents, over and over, and it only got worse. Every time my son would talk about it, would report it to the school, or would report
Mhm.
me, when he goes back to school, it would get worse.
Mm,
How dare you report it? How dare you tell
yeah,
anyone, I'm doing this? And it only got worse for him. And this is why a
right.
lot of children do not speak up about it, because it gets worse for them.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know?
And I think that is in part, yeah,
Sorry.
I think that is in part because it's not just a matter of just speaking to them, but it's allowing children to know that even at a young age there will be consequences for their actions. So if they do not believe that there are going to be consequences, and someone's going to be like, oh Johnny, just don't do this again, okay honey. um that doesn't get us far, and Johnny's going to continue doing it because he doesn't believe that anyone's going to hold him accountable. As soon as
Mhm.
someone starts to hold him accountable for his behavior, then I think, he will get the message that that behavior is unacceptable. One of
Right.
the other things that I think needs to be part of a holistic approach is it's much more difficult for you to bully someone that you have feelings towards and that you are sympathetic towards. So we need to find a way to have our children interact, even when they've had these um, bad experiences with each other, so that they can understand, the young boys and girls who are causing this pain and other young boys and girls need to understand the full impact of what their actions is doing to other young people. So, in other words, just like how we can take young people to go visit a jail cell, well, we don't do this here in the Cayman Islands, but it works effectively in other places, to show them the stark realities of, if you continue your bad behavior, this is where you're likely to end up, in a prison, and this is prison life.
Mhm.
Maybe we need to be sensitizing our young people to, what, when you do this to someone, these are the issues that you cause them. This is now what this young man has to go through. Like, have them feel the pain of the victim. Like, you have to find a way to make our young people empathetic, because I don't
Mhm.
I don't know that empathy is something that everyone is naturally born with or that everyone exhibits. I think there are a lot of people with antisocial behaviors, and again, I suspect most of it is because of their environment and what they're being exposed to, but you can reverse that with other environmental exposures. And so I think that with the help of professionals, people who are part of organizations like the Wayne Panton Foundation and other organizations. There are a lot of mental health professionals on this island. Unfortunately, I don't think that they're enough, because I hear a lot of people saying, they need to make an appointment with a school counselor or school professional, and there's like one psychiatrist for like 4 schools or whatever. I mean, it's just in short supply. So Carolina Ferreira reminds us that the sharing of inappropriate photos of a child under 18 on social media or any other electronic means, WhatsApp, email, etc., is a crime and should be reported to the MASH unit, even if the person sharing the images is a minor. Carolina's absolutely right. And there's something that I have been sitting on in relation to CIS and a teacher at that institution that I'm going to deal with this week. When I deal with it, you guys, it will make more sense as to maybe why I've been very, very cautious about how to do this. But a teacher at CIS has been involved in, allegedly publishing inappropriate videos of herself on a social media platform that she's apparently making money off of and selling. And we have been doing some digging to make sure that this was not a case of her being bullied by anyone or harassed by anyone. And we now have sufficient evidence where it looks like it was completely her doing, putting this information out there. So I'm going to talk about some of that. Eden says that Nathina's story is so troubling. Was there any incident report filed by the medical ambulance staff who picked him up? Has diagnosis of his seizures been attributed to the bullying? So I think you might have missed that part when Nathina said that they cannot identify any physical reasons for the seizures, and they have all said they are a result of psychological and emotional trauma. And listen,
And it seems like the seizures happened right after the bullying incident, right? Like 2 days after the bullying incident.
Yes.
Yeah. And listen, I don't know that people, especially Caribbean people, we tend to want to be really tough. Most of us come from a slave background, which means that a lot of us still have a slave mentality. And that's why we believe in beating our children and we believe in corporal punishment. And we don't understand even the good words in the Bible are meant to be, you can guide your children with love. You can be just as effective with a kind word as you can with a harsh word, or sometimes even more effective. So this idea that we have to be yelling and screaming at our children to get them to behave and threatening them with violence when they don't, I think sends the entirely wrong message. But I was just losing my train of thought there when what comment was that I was reading? Just about the necessity as parents for us to be kind to our children and to show our children love, and we can correct them, I think, in a more gentle way. We don't have to be as abrasive and harsh as we are. So Mia says something that urgently needs addressing that is most horribly sad and disgusting is teachers that bully kids. What are you telling me? Most kids will not report this because they're afraid of the repercussions from someone who in essence has power over them and will seem more credible than them. Even sadder is parents are afraid to address it too for the same reason as above. Well, we did hear Nathina mention her daughter shared with her that the teacher called her the N-word and that was okay. Damien says, what do you think about the term used, white boy or white girl? Is that racist? I don't know why anybody would need to refer, and I don't know if this is teachers or other kids, but why anyone would need to refer to someone by their skin color. I mean, that should not be a determining word. But let me say this to you. Last week, I attended the press conference that the doctor's hospital had. And Wendy Ledger said to me, when we were on our break, she said, Sandy, I saw Alden recently, whatever, and he refers to me as the white Sandra and you as the black Wendy or something like that. And I was like, huh? I don't even know what that means. I don't know if I should be offended by that, but I feel like I should be. But what does that mean even? Like, why would he say that? And she's like, oh, well, I don't know if he's trying to be rude or whatever. And I said to her, I said, that is so interesting. Because I feel like Alden would say that to you, Wendy, but he would never say that to me. Seriously. I've never heard him say that. I'm only telling you the story that Wendy shared with me. But when Damien just asked the question about white boy or white girl, why are we defining people based on color? Like, what does Alden mean when he says Wendy is the black Sandra and I'm the white Wendy? Like, what does that mean? even? I have no idea. Michael says, hope people are starting to see a trend with this government. They don't care about the people of this country. How hard is it to pass this legislation? Louise says, I want to start an online church, making you the preacher, Sandra. Oh no, child. This program is more biblical than most services I've listened to. Child, most churches are not ready for the cold hard truth. Now, you guys know last week I did say for Lent that I'm giving up using profanity. Kathy will be happy to hear that. And a lot of you will be happy to hear it on this program anyway. But yeah, the churches probably wouldn't like my dose of truth. CMR, Church of Truth. We don't have to be in the church to tell the truth either, folks. You know, we're telling the truth. We have to live the truth. And going to church doesn't make you any more saint than, you know, being out in the world makes you a sinner. So I think we need to. Oh, Kathy, what a hot mess. That's my first set of t-shirts for CMR are going to say that. What a hot mess. Because some days I just don't know what else to say. We're certainly appreciative of the conversation here this morning. Allison says that her son was bullied at an early age from year 2 at Prospect Primary. It was horrible. Year 2. Can you imagine? You got to listen to your children too, folks. I mean, even now, my daughter's only 4 years old and she comes home and she'll say, can I tell you something? And I will stop what I'm saying. And I will say, yes, you can tell me something. And she will share little experiences. Like sometimes you don't know at 4 if they're exaggerating how something happened. Like the other day, she said, you know, someone pulled her off the toilet. I don't know how serious that is, but I'm listening and I'm taking it all in and I'm discussing it with my husband to say, you know, is this a discussion that we need to have with the school? Or is just her friend just kind of like, okay, I need to use the bathroom, hurry up and get off the toilet. But we are listening to her and I'm making notations of every single time she tells me something because I've already identified her to be a very sensitive child. So she didn't necessarily get her personality from me in terms of how she responds to certain situations. She's more like her father, but she's got her mouth from me. So she's going to talk about it. She's going to tell us about it. And folks, whether your child is 4 or 14, when they are talking, you need to listen. That's why I never believe in telling children, don't speak until you're spoken to. Adults have more value in this house than you do, you know, and we all are raised up with these sayings and these mantras and way of living that are completely wrong. And we need to free ourselves from this type of thinking. So even, you know, sometimes my husband will say, Gianna, we're having an adult conversation. I'll say, hold on. She wants to express herself in this moment. We have the self-control to have a conversation at any time. Right now, she wants to say something. Yeah, she's got to learn to say, excuse me, and have manners. But at the same time, if she really wants to express herself, under no circumstances should we be telling her, you can't speak right now, or that your voice has no value, because that's ultimately what we're saying. Just like when we chastise our children, we tell our children through our behavior that mommy can beat you with a switch, a belt, whatever, because I love you. And you must tolerate that type of behavior from people that you love, because I have to physically discipline you and love you at the same time. And there's no other way for me to discipline you than to put my hands on you. Then when our young girls and boys go out there and get in abusive relationships with other teens or older men and women who abuse them, and they get into this cycle of abuse, oh, but he loves me, but he gave me a black eye. Oh, but he loves me, but now I have a broken arm. And as parents, we don't recognize that we sent that message to our children a long time ago by our own behavior, and we have somehow allowed them to know that this can be okay. So our show is ending at 9:30. Let me just see how many more of the comments that I can get through. Mark says, hashtag United Against Bullying 345. Thank you so much. Michael says, one of the reasons we need more women in government, women who have compassion and empathy. Absolutely. The right women. Because we got women in there right now who've seen the speaker assault a woman and have said nothing. They have not even said, this is horrible. I can't believe this happened in this country. At a workplace. Workplace violence is also real. Jennifer shares that her daughter was also bullied at primary school. I became almost a permanent fixture at school, trying to talk to teachers and trying to meet with parents who would never show up. Wow. Absolutely, Mark. Accountability at all levels. Catherine, so on the legislative front, we have some work to do. I think Janet and Nathania also agree with that. I think it goes beyond that, though. We have a lot of work to do in our homes, obviously. And in the schools, there are programs, I think, that need to come out as a result of this. Give us an idea of how people can reach out to you ladies through your organization.
We can be contacted at, our email address is unitedagainstbullying2018@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, United Against Bullying 2018.
Okay. Kathy, if you are elected, I shouldn't say if, I will say when you're elected to the Legislative Assembly, this will be one of the first things that you'll be pushing
It's
through.
already, the legislation is ready.
It's already there.
It needs to be put on the table.
Wow.
Absolutely. I will definitely be supporting this.
Yeah.
On day one.
Another mom here, Stephanie, says her daughter was facing bullying at school as well. I had to get the teacher, principal, and vice principal to put an end to it. I mean, so many parents here talking about the fact that their kids have been victims. Jackie says accountability is needed for sure, but the support must be more accessible and comprehensive for both children and families. I'm always surprised. Sometimes I sit in court and I see the judges saying, okay, this man needs to go to counseling. There was one over right before the holidays. The last time he was in court, the social workers and that team said, oh yeah, they would make counseling available to him because apparently they only do group sessions when you have court mandated counseling for, drinking, substance abuse or whatever. So they had to make like a special exception for him to get access to one-on-one counseling. But the whole idea was he had been abusive in the home to the wife. The children were afraid of him. They didn't want him back without getting the help that he needed. And the ancillary services, so, social services, DCFS or whatever, they had promised the court that they would make counseling available to him and private sessions available. And then months later, he was back in court, only for the judge to hear that that was never done. And Magistrate Hernandez was like, why? The last time you guys were here, you told me that this was going to be made available to him and he could start a program immediately. And here we are now with the holidays coming up. He wants to spend time with his wife and family, but I cannot allow him back in the family home unless he's at least done a minimum of, a certain amount of counseling. So I think our systems are failing us in so many ways. Jackie makes a valid point, how government can spend so much money on reports decade after decade and so many projects. I mean, I'm still waiting to hear how much money we spent tearing up Hero Square and redoing it. But yet we cannot spend adequate money on providing mental health services, mental health professionals in our schools. Every single school should have at least one or two full-time mental health professionals who are there and available to children who are going from classroom to classroom, conducting programs, talking to your children with an open door policy, and making themselves available to children who need them. Workplaces. I mean, I think there's still that program. I forget what it's called now. That workplaces will say, oh yeah, if you need help, let us know, but they don't take it seriously. Every workplace should avail themselves of, do you need counseling, having sessions, just like they have training on how to use their computer systems or everything else. Once a quarter, they should have a mental wellness check. We all go to the doctor to have our blood sugar checked or cholesterol checked. Well, some of us do, not all of us. These things are important, but it's equally important to have mental health checks as well. Because a lot of us are barely hanging on mentally by a thread, especially during COVID. COVID has been a tough time on our children, and it's been a tough time on a lot of homes. People have lost jobs. There's a lot of uncertainty in the community. Catherine and Janet, thank you so much for coming on the program today. Thank you, Janet, for reaching out, first of all, to me here on Cayman Mall Road.
Thank you for having us, Sandra.
Having us, Sandy. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, let this not be the only conversation. Let's have this be one of many, because I think we need to progress this forward, and there's lots of solutions out there. We need to implement them and start to work towards a more meaningful program. I would love to hear from some of the private schools as well, because they go very much under the radar, like I said, and not addressing this issue head on. Why do they not have anti-bullying policies? For private institutions, they don't have the paperwork that government has and the red tape. So you would think it would be so much easier for them to get things done. But as the saying says, where there's a will, there's a way. And if there is no will, nothing will ever change.
True. And Sandy, I just want to say that I saw Nathani and her son over the weekend. And, while speaking to her in the space of 20 minutes, the young boy had 2 seizures right in front of my eyes. I could not believe it.
Wow.
I could not believe it. It's so sad, and something needs to be done. Something needs to be done immediately.
Wow. Unbelievable. I mean, I cannot imagine having a healthy child and then you go from that to having a child who's like constantly having seizures. I mean, as you guys can see, Nathina is stressed out. And that stress isn't good on her, and it's not good for the rest of her family. But, she's trying to save her son. Yes. And of course, what mother wouldn't be trying to do that? All of us need to do our best. Now, Janet has shared some information with us about the mission statement of the group. So United Against Bullying. And they do have some information here. It was a little bit difficult to pull up on the screen because of how it's oriented, but they've got a Twitter page, Instagram page. They are on Facebook. The website is unitedagainstbullying.ky. They have a mission statement here, which is the United Against Bullying Foundation was established to raise awareness and educate the Cayman Islands about bullying and develop solutions to help support and protect those impacted in order to prevent and stop bullying behavior. They aim to create real positive changes by uniting with other organizations, local government agencies, and the Cayman Islands community, including parents, caregivers, and educators. Our focus is those who have experienced bullying, those who are bullying, and their parents and guardians and educators. We challenge the Cayman community to unite with us against bullying and to create and sustain an anti-bullying culture in the Cayman Islands. And cultural changes are the hardest changes in the world to make. But folks, for the sake of our children, I think it's obvious here today that we need to do so. So thank you so much, Kathy. And thank you so much, Janet and Nathina, who had to go to work, for joining us this morning. And I want us all to reach out to this organization and to these 3 women to lend our support in any way that we can.
And if there's anyone that, has any access to support for Nathina, they can also reach out to United Against Bullying. Because as we all see, she needs support right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Catherine. All right, ladies. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll go through, I know our guests have other commitments, but I'll go through some of the other comments. Jackie says we need a minister of education that really cares and involves his or herself into the public education system ASAP. That would be great. Romelia says this is so true. Once I went to the school to address a teacher who told a family member he was worthless and will become nothing. Wow. At school. So that means that family member was a child, no doubt. Jackie says, I think this is the biggest risk in the elections. Many candidates will agree this is an issue, but then through horse trading, we risk ending up with someone completely incompetent to run the ministry, and the children will continue to suffer. Well, that is why I think the first important thing is to try to elect as many like-minded individuals as we can, the ones who have proven themselves to not be worthy of our vote, who are in there now, who are basically telling us to vote for them just because they've been there and they've been doing something. That's not enough of a reason. So I think a lot of those individuals got to go. They've not been speaking out on any of the issues primarily that matter to the people of this country. This country is comprised of families, of children who have mental health issues, who are being abused, all this sort of stuff. It's not just about financial services and the bottom, the dollar. So Mark says workplace bullying is real. Let us not forget, folks, that the woman who was assaulted by the Speaker of the House, again, read the sentencing judgment, folks. She had been subjected on a regular basis to verbal bullying and assaults from Mr. Bush. This was the first time that it had gotten to that level, but it was not the first time she'd had an incident with him in terms of him speaking to her in any manner that he thought that he could. So, Danilia, thank you so much for reminding me. It's the EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program. I appreciate it. Nathina is here in the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And we're going to reach out to some people to see how we can get you and your family some additional assistance. Marshall says too much lip service and not enough action. Amen to that. Thelma says they need a boot camp in Savannah Primary. Listen, it's not even about a boot camp, folks. We need to have on a regular basis, like every quarter at least, these types of programs. It should be part of the curriculum for children to be having discussions about bullying, for children to be learning how to be more empathetic. There should be an entire program that is designed just like any other academic program. So just how your kids learn the sciences and the math subjects and whatever, there has to be one that introduces certain important mental health components to them and how they can be more empathetic towards people. And they should have to go through like actual exercises that teach them how to trust, how to be empathetic, how to, relate to other people. I mean, listen, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. I know for a fact that these programs exist because from the time that I was in high school, I graduated in 1991 from high school. So it's been a minute. I can tell you that I myself, as a high school student, was involved in it was called peer counseling program, where I would sit down and work with other peers. So they identified young people who they felt had certain key strengths to work with other people. And we made ourselves available. We had to get training and counseling and stuff as well. But we made ourselves available as peer counselors for other students to come and talk to us. It is often much easier for peers to talk to people their own age, or maybe someone just a little bit older than them, as opposed to an adult. So these programs exist. Did we ever have one here? This wasn't here, by the way. I went to school in the States. So this was a program in the US. We can set up such a program. We can do it. Right? I was part of teen court. We're first time. So Nathania says she did that here as well. So at some point it was here. I was part of a teen court program where first time juvenile offenders weren't just thrown into the court system. They were afforded an opportunity with a jury of their peers holding them accountable, hearing their story. We did like a little mock trial. All of this stuff I've been talking about that program for years. I've given government the program. Here are the benefits of it. Here's how it can help young people. I was in one of the sort of foundation groups that did that in Tampa, Florida, way back in the early 90s. And it works extremely well. And it gives young people the opportunity to stay out of the criminal justice system, but to still be held accountable for their actions. So Jaron, good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big shout out to Jaron. I know he's a big fan of the program. His mommy told me that. Now, I know a lot of young people. On Friday, I was at Foster's and I had just gotten a call from an international vendor about something. And as I was talking to them, this young lady like popped up at my driver's side door. And I told the vendor, hold on a second, let me put you on hold. And I rolled down my window and this young lady just wanted to say hi. And her mommy's like, oh my gosh, she loves you so much. She loves Cayman Mall Road. And I know a lot of young people actually follow this platform. There's something about it that they like. Maybe it's just the honesty of what we represent here in terms of media in the Cayman Islands. And she couldn't have been more than maybe 10 or 11. And I got out of my car. I took a few minutes to speak with her. I gave her a little mug. I thanked her for being a supporter. Sometimes people are looking up to us as role models and we don't even know it. And this is why our behaviors, we got to keep ourselves in check. So I appreciate the feedback that we get on this program. Sabrina says, United Against Bullying cannot do it alone. We need more hands. I say we need all hands on deck with this issue. We have to unite as a community. Every single one of you who commented this morning, folks, to say that you have had a child who has been bullied. You have experienced bullying as a young person. Atlas, you now have a role to play in trying to be the solution to the problem. You can't just let this lie like, oh yes, I was bullied. And so, eventually I got over it and life goes on. We need to contribute through our own experiences. We should be going into schools as adults, into churches, however we can reach our young people, having these conversations with them. Maybe some former reform bullies need to be a part of this program. Yes, I bullied other people, and here's what was going on in my life at the time, why I was doing that. Yes, I was bullied, and here's how it impacted my life and how it made me feel. Running away from the problem, folks, isn't the answer. Taking your kids from one school to another school isn't the answer. The answer is forcing our legislators, or parents, or school administrators, and even the police to take bullying extremely seriously and to start to address these issues. We will have more than one show on this topic. And we are going to have other shows about mental health. We got to bring professionals on here. We will have members of the Wayne Panton Foundation. All of these components it's like a crossword puzzle. You don't get a complete picture by just putting in 2 pieces or 5 pieces of the crossword puzzle. There are many pieces that have to come together for the crossword puzzle to make sense and for you to see the full potential and the full beauty of what is possible. Such a small community, it saddens my heart that there have been so many stories and so many instances of bullying here in the Cayman Islands. It shouldn't be the case. We talk about how diverse we are as a community, but oftentimes that diversity is a sham. We're just covering up. Yes, we have 130 something nationalities here, but it's a sham because we have fighting between, even in this Caymanians, we have infighting. Oh, I'm a Georgetowner, so I got to issue with people just because they're from West Bay. I mean, it gets so stupid and so ridiculous. Let's do better. We know better. Let's do better and let's start educating ourselves and implementing some policies on how we can move forward in a more positive manner in this community. Folks, you've been listening to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Thank you guys so much. The message today is we need to stop bullying at all costs. It's a price that is too high to pay when I see someone like Nathina crying on this program because her son now has physical ailments, physical seizures because of the stress that his poor brain is under. It's just not right. It just isn't right. It's not right that we continue to divide members of this community, whether they're part of the LGBT community, whether they're darker skin, lighter skin, foreigners, Caymanians, whatever. We need to unite against hate, and we need to unite against bullying. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the program this morning. I appreciate your support. We've got a lot of election stuff going on, so Kenneth will definitely be on the program tomorrow. There will be some announcements coming this week for some new candidates as well, as everyone approaches the upcoming deadline for nomination day, which is March the 1st, which, just for the record, in case you keep in track, is 1 day from today. So this is it, folks. If the candidates haven't come out yet, they've got in between now and next week, Monday. Next week, Monday's nomination day. CMR will be out and about at as many of the polling locations as we can where people will be nominated. And we've got a special treat for you coming this week in relation to the election. Lots of election news and coverage. So I want to make sure that you guys stay tuned for that.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.